I hope I'm visible to the members of the audience and to the viewers. So I'm grateful to lawmarathi.com for giving me this opportunity to interact with the lawyers of Maharashtra. I'm happy that there are portals and entities like Law Marathi, which are raising awareness about the legal system in courts and also doing it in regional languages such as Marathi. And I'm happy to actually interact with members of the Maharashtra Bar on such an important topic. So let me quickly begin to share my views on the subject, and I'll try and keep this as short as possible so that we can take as many questions as we can. Now, I'm sure that the organizers would have shared with you the details of the petition that has been filed before the Supreme Court with respect to the Bengal violence. I understand that there are quite a few myths and misconceptions about what is the nature of the petition, what does it exactly seek, and what is the legal basis for having filed the petition. So let me just give you a brief background as to the nature of the petition, and then I'll answer questions, or rather I'll get into the question of Articles 355 and 356. So the petition has been filed on behalf of a trust called the Indic Collective Trust, which is a civil liberties entity based out of Chennai and has actively participated in several litigations before the Supreme Court and several high courts. Now, the petition has been filed in the backdrop of and in relation to the post-poll violence which has been going on in Bengal, and it's still underway from whatever I've heard from the ground sources, people who have been reaching out to me telling me what's going on there. I hope to appear for this entity, and the petition was put together by a wonderful advocate on record, Mr. Sumitra Sundaram of the Supreme Court. The petition was put together in a matter of 24 hours, but for all practical purposes, I believe it's on the point as far as the law is concerned and captures all the necessary factual details to satisfy the jurisdictional as well as the substantive requirements before the Supreme Court. Now, the petition has been filed seeking 5 to 6 broad prayers. The first prayer, if I may just read out the prayers for the benefit of the viewers so that people know exactly what is being sought in the petition, because there are quite a few rumors that are floating about with respect to the petition. The first prayer that has been sought is to issue a direction to the respondent number 1, which is the union government, to deploy central protection forces including the armed forces for restoration of law and order in the state of Bengal. The second prayer is to seek the constitution of a special investigation team headed by a retired justice of the Honorable Supreme Court to look into the involvement of individuals in the targeted pogrom in West Bengal. The third prayer is for issuance of directions for immediate arrest of and prosecution against all individuals involved and are responsible for the commission of heinous offences in the aftermath of the assembly elections. The fourth prayer is issue directions for setting up and establishing a special court to adjudicate and dispose of matters pertaining to the prosecution of miscreants and or any individuals or organizations involved in the commission of heinous offences. The fifth prayer is where there seems to be a bit of confusion because of misreportage on the part of certain mainstream portals as well as specialist legal portals who don't seem to have applied their mind to this prayer. The prayer says, declare that the constitutional machinery in the state of West Bengal has been broken down, or rather has broken down within the meaning of Article 356 for further consideration by His Excellency the Honorable President of India. Predictably, I don't think several portals have even bothered to read the petition as well as the specific prayer and the language of the prayer. What is it that we have sought essentially, apart from the constitution of, or rather the deployment of central forces, the constitution of a special investigating team, so on and so forth, is based on a clear reading of Article 356, specifically sub-Article 1. Now, typically, for President's rule to be invoked or proclaimed under Article 356, we all know that the S.R. Bommai judgment of 1994 is the landmark judgment, and therefore that is the law which occupies the field, so to speak, as far as this issue is concerned, and we don't have any problems with that. Now, since the governor of the state of West Bengal has put out tweets specifically saying that the state police is no more responding to his calls, nor are they submitting to him the reports that he has sought on the law and order situation in the state of West Bengal. Clearly, the governor is not in a position to submit a report on the details of the law and order situation, except for saying that the situation appears to be bad based on the reports, let's say, which he can gather from public sources, from Facebook posts and from the tweets of political leaders, including former MPs across the political spectrum. And therefore, we have taken the position that since the governor may or may not be in a position to submit a report within the meaning of Article 356(1) for the purposes of submission to the president, so that the president can invoke his prerogative or discretion with respect to proclamation of his rule in the state of West Bengal, we are asking the Supreme Court, we are praying to the Supreme Court to take cognizance of these circumstances, which shows that a plethora of voices from across the political spectrum have said that people who have opposed the TMC in the elections, in the assembly elections, are the ones who are being persecuted and are the ones who are being hounded and murdered or killed or raped, or their property is being destroyed. And that seems to be the unanimous opinion from across the political spectrum on the other side of the fence. Therefore, we are telling the Supreme Court that it is possible for the Supreme Court to take cognizance of this particular situation and arrive at the conclusion that the constitutional machinery in the state of West Bengal has broken down as a consequence of the brazen conduct and inaction of the state government of West Bengal. Therefore, even in the absence of a report from the governor of the state, it is possible for the Supreme Court to form an opinion on the state of law and order situation in that state, and then that particular opinion or that observation or that finding of fact from the Supreme Court can be relied upon by the Honorable President if he so chooses for the purposes of Article 356 to proclaim an emergency. Therefore, this nuance has been lost sight of, and at least two portals, I don't wish to name the portals, have given the impression that we are asking the Supreme Court to invoke Article 356 and impose an emergency. All of us, I think even law students, understand that the judiciary cannot impose, hopefully, and let's hope that day never comes, cannot impose emergency in any state, because Article 356 is the exclusive power and prerogative of the President. So how is it that we have been able to craft this particular petition where we are asking the Supreme Court to at least form an opinion on the state of law and order in the state of West Bengal? I will just read out Article 356, specifically sub-article 1, to explain the basis of this particular prayer. Article 356 says, provisions in case of failure of constitutional machinery in states. Sub-article 1 reads, if the President, on receipt of a report from the governor of a state or otherwise, is satisfied that a situation has arisen in which the government of the state cannot be carried on in accordance with the provisions of this constitution, the President may by proclamation, so on and so forth. So therefore we are saying that the condition precedent for the President to be satisfied that a situation has arisen that the government of the state cannot carry on its functioning in accordance with the provisions of the constitution, either the report of the governor must be presented or otherwise, which means even if a report of the governor is not possible, then there must be other circumstances or other evidence, or let's say other documents or other sources through which the President can form this particular opinion. And in this case, we are requesting the Supreme Court to aid the President in the formation of that particular opinion, factual opinion, with respect to the status of the constitutional machinery in the state of West Bengal. So in Article 356(1), when it says on the receipt of a report from the governor of a state or otherwise, we are relying on or otherwise of Article 356(1), which has been the subject of interpretation and extensive discussion in the judgment of the Supreme Court in S.R. Bomai as well. So let me give you the specific chapter, or rather paragraphs of the S.R. Bomai judgment which are relevant to the discussion at hand, so that we know for a fact that if the governor of a state is either incapacitated or is not being given the support that he needs to prepare a report with respect to the law and order situation in the state, what are the options available outside of the governor's report for the president to be able to take the position that the constitutional machinery in a state is actually broken down. So the relevant judgments on this particular issue and on Article 356, which I believe are of consequence. The first judgment is the judgment of extrajudicial execution victim families versus Union of India. This judgment was delivered on the 13th of July 2016, and this was delivered by Justices Madan Lokur and UU Lalit, and this is obviously post SR Bommai. So this is a judgment in 2016. The relevant paragraphs of this judgment, which help us understand certain issues with respect to the difference between internal disturbance under Article 356 and armed rebellion within the meaning of Article 352, paragraphs 85 to 92 of this particular judgment, but specifically on the interpretation of or otherwise within the meaning of Article 356(1). The SR Bommai of this, SR Bommai versus Union of India judgment has at least 6 to 7 paragraphs where this issue has been discussed. Paragraph 34, 43, 44, 53, 56, 57, 150 and 151, where the court has interpreted the meaning of or otherwise within the meaning of Article 356(1). So let me read out those paragraphs so that we know that this petition that has been filed in the Supreme Court is not without basis, and in stark contrast to the manner in which some people have misinterpreted it, we are not asking the judiciary to impose emergency. Just a second, let me just open the judgment and read out the relevant portions. So let's start with paragraph 34. So in paragraph 34, it reads as follows. The marginal note of Article 356 indicates that the power conferred by that provision is exercisable in case of failure of constitutional machinery in the states. While the text of the said article does not use the same phraseology, it empowers the president on his being satisfied that a situation has arisen in which the government of the state cannot be carried out in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution, that is, on the failure of the constitutional machinery, to take action in the manner provided in subclauses A, B and C of clause 1. This action he must take on receipt of a report from the governor of the concerned state or otherwise if he is satisfied therefrom about the failure of the constitutional machinery. Article 356(1) confers extraordinary powers on the president, which he must exercise sparingly and with great circumspection only if he is satisfied from the governor's report or otherwise that a situation has arisen in which the government of the state cannot be carried out in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. The expression otherwise is of very wide import and cannot be restricted to material capable of being tested on principles relevant to admissibility of evidence in courts of law. It would be difficult to predicate the nature of material which may be placed before the president or which he may have come across before taking action under Article 356(1). Besides, since the president is not expected to record his reasons for his subjective satisfaction, it would be equally difficult for the court to enter the political thicket to ascertain what weighed with the president for the exercise of the power under the said provision. Therefore, in paragraph 34 of the SR Bommai judgment, the Supreme Court has effectively taken the position that the phrase or the words or otherwise within the meaning of Article 356(1) is so broad that it is possible for the president to rely on whatever sources he deems fit and admissible so that he may form an opinion for the purposes of his satisfaction that the constitutional machinery in the state of West Bengal has broken down. In this case, since the governor is not in a position, am I audible? Am I visible and audible? Yeah, okay. Therefore, in the facts of this case, since the state police department has effectively abandoned its duty, the bureaucracy doesn't seem to have stepped up to the situation and has not come to the aid of the people. Political opponents of the victorious party across the board, from the Congress to the left to the BJP and their cadre, are being murdered on the streets. Women are being assaulted, their modesty is being outraged. Properties are being targeted and vandalized specifically because of the political choices exercised by the people. And therefore, news reports from India Today to Al Jazeera and any number of news reports from Anand Bazar Patrika as well have been presented before the Supreme Court as part of the petition to explain that there is indeed a breakdown of the constitutional machinery, and therefore it is possible for the Supreme Court to take cognizance of the situation and declare that the constitutional machinery has broken down, and that particular finding and judgment can be placed before the Honorable President for His Excellency to take a decision as to whether a situation has arisen for the exercise of his discretion for proclamation of emergency, for proclamation of his rule, not emergency, under Article 356. Therefore, this is the sum and substance of this particular petition. So, in a situation where the constitutional dignitary, such as the governor to the police constable, are completely helpless, or they have been, let's say, pushed to a point where they're not in a position to discharge their duties, then it must be possible, especially at the time of a pandemic, for the Supreme Court to come to the conclusion that the constitutional machinery has broken down. For all practical purposes, let me even go a step further. Even if no other entity such as the Supreme Court or the governor comes to such a conclusion and is not in a position to furnish such a report, which is required under Article 356(1), the President can take cognizance of the situation based on the news reports on his own. So it is not necessary for the President to wait for the judgment of the Supreme Court to arrive at the conclusion that there is a problem in the state of West Bengal, or that the law and order in the state of West Bengal has completely gone to the dogs, literally speaking. So it's possible for the President to invoke these extraordinary powers. Now, one of the reasons that the President can also do this is, unfortunately, for reasons best known to the central government, the powers available under Article 355 to the Union to take charge of the situation, because there is a clear internal dissidence, and therefore it is possible for the central government to step into the picture without even asking for the President's rule under Article 356, but this Union government is not doing so. So here is a situation where the Union government itself has not interfered with the situation, has chosen for some reason to not step into the situation despite its own party leaders from the state asking for help, and several people putting out tweets and sending out videos and messages begging for help, saying that they're actually being targeted, bombs are being hurled, properties are being vandalized, and women are being raped and gang raped. In fact, 2 election agents of the BJP have been gang raped. And to the extent that the former MP of the BJP from Rajya Sabha, Shri Swatan Das Gupta, has put out tweets drawing attention to acts of molestation, and 1,000 families at least being asked to vacate Birbhum and Nanur and so many places, and yet the central government has not stepped into the picture for reasons best known to them. I am not getting into the political aspects of it. I am merely saying, since the central government is not doing anything, the only option left is to go to the Supreme Court in this extraordinary situation, as opposed to going to the High Court under Article 226, simply because here's a situation where the state machinery seems to be under the fear of any kind of action, and they fear some kind of political retribution from the government which is going to come back to power, or from the party that's going to come back to power. So in a situation such as this, the option certainly is to approach the Supreme Court, failing which the option of approaching the President is also on the table. So when somebody tells me that SR Bommai comes in the way, SR Bommai comes in the way, I'm sorry, SR Bommai does not come in the way. SR Bommai is crystal clear on the interpretation of the words "or otherwise." So while ordinarily it is possible, and perhaps people must wait for the governor of the state to prepare a report in order for the president to invoke his jurisdiction under Article 356. If the governor himself puts out public tweets saying that he is completely helpless and that the state police officials, including the AGP of the police and other top police officials, are not responding to his calls, nor are they submitting any reports, I'm sure the president is not completely helpless under Article 356. The object is to ensure that a democratically elected government is not suspended or the president's rule is not imposed willy-nilly. That is the purpose of SR Bommai. But its purpose is not to completely render the president's powers useless and teethless. So these are the primary considerations on the basis of which this petition has been filed before the Supreme Court. I have been informed by the advocate on record that the registry has cleared whatever formality issues were there in the petition, and hopefully it should be listed before the Supreme Court soon. So the primary attempt here is to dispel the misconceptions with respect to the nature of the prayers sought in the petition. Now, the other relevant provision which I mentioned is Article 355. Let me just read out Article 355 and its relationship with Article 356. Article 355 speaks of the duty of the Union to protect states against external aggression and internal disturbance. So it says, it shall be the duty of the Union to protect every state against external aggression and internal disturbance, and to ensure that the government of every state is carried on in accordance with the provisions of this Constitution. Now, there has been a tendency on the part of some people to say that Articles 355 and 356 must be read together, and therefore all the limitations imposed on Article 356 must equally be imposed on Article 355. But there are judgments to the contrary which clearly say, and there are committee reports to the contrary which clearly say, that 355 and 356 need not be read together. Of course, the government, the union government cannot step into the picture because there is always the concept of, let's say, the state being the sole repository or the primary repository of law and order. But in a situation where there is an internal disturbance, and obviously the disturbance here is a law and order disturbance that's being referred to within the meaning of Article 355, notwithstanding the fact that law and order is within the state subject and is within the domain of the state, 355 clearly recognizes the power and the duty of the union to step into the picture if it perceives an internal disturbance. In this case, there is an internal disturbance. How do we not know for a fact whether illegal migrants from the other side of the border are hand in glove with the state government to cause the trouble that they have caused? Because there seems to be not just a political hue to this particular pogrom, there also seems to be a religious hue to this particular pogrom, because people are being targeted on the basis of their political as well as religious affiliations. That is the nature of what is happening here. What kind of slogans are being raised? That is something that people must take cognizance of. So therefore, independent of Article 356, the union government has a power under Article 355. Now, when the words internal disturbance are used within the meaning of Article 355, what is the meaning of an internal disturbance and how is it different from an armed rebellion within the meaning of Article 352? SR Bommai distinguishes both these very, very clearly and comes to the conclusion that since emergency is the aspect that is being dealt with by Article 352, in order for an emergency to be proclaimed within the meaning of Article 352, an armed rebellion must be something that must threaten the security of the state. Therefore, the standard, the threshold is certainly way higher compared to Article 355 or 356. So therefore, I would say 352 is the highest bar or the highest standard, followed by 356 because the president's rule is sought to be invoked, followed by 355 where the union can step into the picture in the event of an internal disturbance. So an internal disturbance leads to 355. The breakdown of a constitutional machinery leads to 356. An armed rebellion, among other things, leads to 352. On these, you have at least 3 or 4 judgments. So I had cited the judgment of extrajudicial execution victim families versus Union of India, which is of 2016. The other judgment is Naga People's Movement versus Union of India. So let me just share the details of this judgment as well. This judgment was also delivered after the SR Bommai judgment, and this was by a constitution bench on the 27th of November 1997. Naga People's Movement of Human Rights versus Union of India. This was under the Chief Justiceship of Justice J.S. Verma. Then you have the judgment in Gujarat Mazdoor Sabha versus the state of Gujarat. This is of 2020, the 1st of October 2020, delivered by a 3-judge bench of Justice Chandrachud, Justice Indu Malhotra and Justice K.M. Joseph on the 1st of October 2020. Of course, this was in the context of the Factories Act and the Labour Matters. Then, of course, you have the judgment, S.R. Bomai, which is the landmark judgment of 1994. In none of these judgments do I find a restriction on the power of the union to do what is necessary within the meaning of Article 355 to put down an internal disturbance, or the President's power to rely on other sources to be able to come to the conclusion that a situation has arisen wherein the constitutional machinery of a state has broken down and therefore his intervention is warranted. Now, these are options which, according to me, are certainly available, and in the backdrop of the Bengal violence, I'm sure most people are aware that the National Commission of Women has taken so much cognizance of the situation there, and I think they have also decided to visit the state, or they've already visited the state. Then a petition was also filed, I think, after our petition before the Calcutta High Court, but the Calcutta High Court has decided to await the findings by the Supreme Court because there are 2 petitions before the Supreme Court. The first one was filed by Mr. Gaurav Bhatia, the spokesperson of the BJP, wherein he has specifically asked for the CBI to investigate into the law and order situation of West Bengal, followed by our petition, which is effectively filed by the Indic Collective Trust with 5 prayers. The first 4 prayers don't ask for the President's rule. The first 4 prayers effectively ask for central forces to be deployed, for a special investigation team, and for a fast-track court to be set up. The last prayer is the prayer with respect to a finding by the Supreme Court that there must be a finding of the breakdown of the constitutional machinery. Now, I think last evening there was a news debate on I think CNN News 18, in which I happened to take part, and I was told by let's say a certain member of the TMC that since the new government has not taken power, or rather it has not taken oath or not assumed power, there is no question of it being blamed for the law and order situation in the country. Then I must ask myself, according to them, who is running the state during the elections? Isn't there a concept of a caretaker government? Can there be a vacuum in the executive? Can there be a power vacuum unless and until there is a hung assembly? Between 2 elections, is it the understanding of the ruling party at this point in Bengal, or at least the party which is victorious, that there is a vacuum during the course of the transition? Is the governor expected to be the person responsible for everything that happens in the state? So this Home Ministry, the Ministry of Home Affairs, all of these departments effectively go into a vacation mode the moment the elections start. Is that the understanding of this party? This seems to be the tone and tenor that they have taken, that there is nothing that they are responsible for during this entire period of transition. That can't be the way things function, because power in a democracy is not an entity that can suffer a vacuum. Someone or the other is responsible, and as long as it's not a government which has been effectively asked to put in its papers because it does not enjoy the confidence of the people anymore, and if it's only a question of a transition between elections and it's the same party that's coming back to power, surely it cannot lie in their mouth that they're not responsible for law and order. Because if that were the situation, then the understanding must be that during the course of the transition, the president must effectively come into, the president's rule must effectively come into being. That can't be the argument. So whatever you read in mainstream media as well as in so-called specialist portals with respect to the nature of our petition, I would request you to certainly go through the petition yourself. It runs into only about 23 pages and the rest of them are annexures showing news reports and tweets. This is available on the website of the Indic Collective Trust. Go through the petition and ask yourself if there is a single line in the petition that says that the Supreme Court must impose the president's rule on the state of West Bengal. There is no such pleading at all. I just read out prayer 12.5. Prayer 12.5 is crystal clear in its language because I settled the draft. I know what I'm talking about. The entire set of prayers that have been drafted are well within the limits of Article 356 and certainly within the limits imposed by the S.R. Bomai judgment. There's not a single line out of place with respect to what can be sought from the judiciary. In fact, people should read the Sarkaria Commission report, because that report specifically interprets or otherwise and clearly says that ordinarily the president must await the report of the governor, but if the governor for some reason is not in a position to submit a report for the exercise of discretion under Article 356, then it is open to the president to rely on other sources, and the credibility of those sources and the veracity of those sources is for the president to judge. That is the risk you take under Article 356. That's an assumed risk because the entire machinery is broken down. So I will stop it at this because I think a lot of questions are being asked. So I'll answer each of those questions. Please ensure that the questions are relevant to the theme of the discussion, because I am not in a position to answer political questions. I am not a political attaché. I don't pass off as the mouthpiece or the spokesperson of any party. I'm not paid to do so at the very least. So I would suggest that you ask me questions which are legal in nature. Yes, Mr. Yogesh, we have attached the media reports from Al Jazeera to Anand Bazar Patrika to India Today. All those media reports have been attached. Let me just share the link here so that people can read it. Just a second, please. So that people can at least understand the basis of the petition. It's a very short petition. Not a single submission has been made which requires the transgression of the constitutional framework. Yeah, so for those interested, I have shared the link here in the chat section. Please go through it. Yes, please. Are there any questions? Let me just go through to see. So, Mr. Yogesh, to answer your question, so his question is, Mr. Yogesh Pramod Bhavishkar has asked me the question, how about the authenticity of media reports? Can courts rely on that? Sir, the Supreme Court has taken cognizance of media reports and even Facebook posts in any number of cases, or for that matter, even plain and simple representations. That's the origin of the PIL story in this country, when Justice Bhagwati and Justice Krishna Iyer started taking cognizance of letters, whether or not they're supported by any kind of affidavits or any kind of documents. So here you have media reports cutting across the political spectrum or the ideological spectrum, basically saying the same thing over and over again, that threats were issued before the conclusion of elections, and following the election results, immediately there's an outbreak of violence where people from one particular party are targeting people of all other parties. Everybody has been saying this. Now, at the very least, when media has been reporting this, you certainly don't expect the state government or the central government to stay mum about it, but unfortunately that seems to be the case, and therefore we have had to approach the Supreme Court. In fact, I don't know if you're aware of this, sir. A couple of days ago, Justice Chandrachud, heading a three-judge bench of Justice Nageshwar Rao and Justice Bhatt, Mr. Ravindra Bhatt, has come out with a judgment with respect to the handling of the COVID situation, including availability of essential medicines. I know that because I happen to be a part of this particular petition, where I was representing a few pharmaceutical companies asking for compulsory licensing provisions under the Patents Act to be invoked. And in that, Justice Chandrachud specifically says that the government must not clamp down on Facebook posts where people are asking for oxygen cylinders or for ICU beds, or are reporting on the nature of the situation with respect to COVID in the respective areas. So when Facebook posts are treated as a medium of communication at a time of a pandemic, here is a situation where the state government is looking one way while miscreants are running amok in that particular state. If Facebook posts can be relied upon for the purposes of the COVID, why can't we rely on media reports from credible mainstream portals? Surely we don't believe that the writ petition proceeding, or let's say the PIL proceeding, is bound by the same rigor as the CPC. There is an established law on that particular issue as well. Whether or not they're conclusive, they at least point to the fact that there is something going on that merits further investigation, which is why we have asked for primarily for deployment of central forces and the constitution of a special investigation team. Assuming for a moment that the petitioner had directly jumped the gun and said, impose president's rule without any reference to SR Bommai or without any reference to any credible reports, I would have completely understood your point. The first prayer is deployment of central forces. The second prayer is the constitution of a special investigation team under the stewardship of a retired judge of the Supreme Court. The third prayer is for a fast track court. Then you come to the question of the constitutional machinery taking stock of the situation. Only after all of this is done. So think of this as a geared approach. The first gear is the deployment of central forces. I am just going through some of these questions one by one. The idea is not to avoid any question, comfortable or otherwise. So let me try my best. What is the legal provision, fantastic, allowing Union to deploy armed forces? This is a brilliant question. Here's where I would request you to take a look at entry 2A of list 1 of the Constitution, and let me just read this out. Entry 2A of Union list, because not many people are actually aware of this particular list. Deployment of any armed forces of the Union or any other force subject to the control of the Union or any other contingent or unit thereof in any state in aid of the civil power, powers, jurisdiction, privileges and liabilities of members of such forces while on such deployment. This is under entry 2A of the Union list. And when can this be invoked? Whether in support of Article 356 or 352. The Supreme Court has commented on this in paragraphs 86 to 90 in the extrajudicial execution victim families versus Union of India judgment, which I just mentioned, of Justice Madan Lokur and Justice Lalit of July 2016. Paragraphs 86, 87, 88 and 90, they spell out what are the conditions which have to be satisfied for deployment of Union forces under entry 2A. In paragraphs 89, 91 and 92, what is the meaning of deployment of Union forces in aid of civil power? That has been spelled out. So there are judgments on this point. Again, in the Naga People's Movement judgment, in paragraphs 21, 22, 28, 30 and 40, there is a specific discussion on entry 2A in list 1 and how to use it to maintain public order. This is in the backdrop of the Armed Forces Special Power Act. And again in paragraphs 28 and 29, there is a reference to the meaning of in aid of civil power. So there are judgments on this. There is a separate entry that addresses this particular question independent of Articles 355 and 356. Now whether the Supreme Court will intervene or not, obviously you know and I know that in law school they don't teach us astrology or Jyotish Shastra, so I am not in a position to say with confidence what the Supreme Court will do and will not do. I can only tell you that the petition has a clear legal basis, has a credible, solid basis, constitutional basis on the basis of which it has been filed. Now, I think someone's asked me, is there any precedent in which the Supreme Court gave such a report and the President has acted upon it? To be honest, I haven't found any judgment as a precedent on this particular point, but I have certainly judgments which say what is the meaning of or otherwise. There is another provision whose attention I'd like to draw you to. Why don't you take a look at Article 143 of the Constitution. Article 143 of the Constitution is the power of the President to consult the Supreme Court. So if the President wants to consult the Supreme Court on certain issues of fact or law, it is possible under Article 143. So let me read out the provision in its entirety. If at any time it appears to the President that a question of law or fact has arisen or is likely to arise, which is of such a nature and of such public importance that it is expedient to obtain the opinion of the Supreme Court upon it, he may refer the question to that court for consideration, and the court may, after such hearing as it thinks fit, report to the President its opinion thereon. So you have Article 356(1) which says or otherwise. It is complemented by the power of the Supreme Court to advise the government or to advise the President, and the power of the President to seek opinion from the Supreme Court, not just on questions of law, but on question of fact as well under Article 143 expressly. So legally speaking, there is a power that is available to the president under Article 143 to lean on the Supreme Court to ask for a report on the factual situation of the constitutional machinery in the state of West Bengal, both under Article 356(1) and under Article 143. It's certainly possible. Unfortunately, when we look at Article 356, we keep saying SR Bommai, SR Bommai. What was it that SR Bommai said? What is it that SR Bommai has said which acts as a limitation on these options? Nothing. Okay, then I'm just looking at certain other questions. If president's rule is imposed, what will be the aftermath? Will there be a floor test after 6 months? What is the legal provision? Will Supreme Court intervene? See, if the president's rule is imposed, what will be the aftermath? Take a look at Article 356. Because the question is, if there is a democratically elected government which certainly enjoys the majority, and yet the constitutional machinery has broken down, that is certainly a situation which is within the meaning of Article 356. Meaning thereby, it does not require a minority government, or it does not require a confidence of no motion to be moved for Article 356 to be invoked. Article 356 can be invoked whenever constitutional machinery has broken down. That includes a law and order situation. So let's take a look at Article 356. So and so. Correct. A proclamation so approved shall, unless revoked, cease to operate on the expiration of 6 months. So after 6 months, assume for a moment that if the president is of the opinion that he can withdraw his rule, and that the party which was in power prior to his rule can take over the administration, can certainly, unless and until there is a dissolution of the house, unless and until certain members defect, or that there is a sudden change in the power balance of the particular situation, then the party that has been elected will continue to do so. Take a look at this particular provision as far as 356(4) is concerned. What does it say? Provided that if and so often as a resolution approving the continuance in force unless revoked continues, so and so. Provided further that if the dissolution of the House of the People takes place during any such period and a resolution approving the continuance, so and so. So under the second proviso to 356(4), only if there is a dissolution of the House, then you have to seriously consider the possibility of a next election. But the assumption of president's rule doesn't necessarily translate to dissolution of the House. It merely translates to suspension of the House for all practical purposes. That's the meaning of it. So I don't think we should come to the conclusion that immediately upon the let's say the president's rule being invoked under 356, then the party that has succeeded in the hustings at the polls and at the elections will have to prove itself once more in the elections. That's not the interpretation that comes out of Article 356. I think I'll take one more question, and with that I'll end the session unless there are more questions. Yeah, do we have any further questions, please? I don't see any further questions coming forth. Should I take it that the session is done? Okay, so since there are no further questions, I assume that I have been clear or boring, one of these two possibilities. Let me just check with the organizers of the session. So I think that should be the end of the session. I'm grateful to the members of the audience for having turned up and for the organizers for having put together this event at such short notice. Let's see what comes out of the petition of the Supreme Court. Hopefully, as and when the matter is listed, you should hear it from news portals. Thank you. Dhanyavad. Namaste.